Hello, welcome to Cam's Corner. I am your host, Cameron Lawrence. Cam's Corner is a quick 5-minute podcast that just talks about things in fantasy football that I think are really important, things that I don't have enough time to go into detail on social media about, and just answering some of your questions. And so today's episode, I'm going to dive into something that I posted on TikTok, which was my top 10, my way too early top 10 wide receivers for 2022. Now, in that video, I said that my top 10 was at 10, I had Jalen Waddle, 9, DK Metcalf, 8, AJ Brown, 7, Stephon Diggs, 6, Tyreek Hill, 5, Deebo Samuel, 4, Jamar Chase, 3, Devontae Adams, 2, Justin Jefferson, and 1, Cooper Kupp. Now, of course, me having DK Metcalf at number 9 was met with a lot of criticism. And I kind of have addressed this a little bit. I really think that DK Metcalf is going to really take a step forward from what we saw, not last year, but what we saw in 2020. Before Russ came back from injury, DK Metcalf was actually wide receiver 5, including putting up 4 games with Geno Smith that had 25 points, 10 points, 17 points, and 17 points. So I think that even if Russ does leave, he can have good production with a bad quarterback, and he's just so much more physically dominant than everyone else on the field that I really think he can go get those contested balls. I think that he'll score a lot of touchdowns this year, which would be great for fantasy production. Now, with that all being said, obviously I had a lot of guys left off my top 10 that were really upsetting some people. And this is going to happen anytime you do a top 10 list. I don't know if I personally love top 10 lists myself. I like that more tier-based rankings because I think a lot of these guys would fall into that DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle tier, and so I had a very hard time picking who I put in my top 10. Well, I'm just going to address some of the names that I heard real quick. The first guy was Chris Godwin. Obviously, if Chris Godwin comes back healthy, he's in a good situation. I think he cracks my top 10. I just didn't rank him right now because I didn't know when he was going to be returning from injury. The next one I heard, and I heard it a lot, and I was very surprised by this, was Michael Thomas. Now, Michael Thomas hasn't played in 2 years. And that told me, A, this is either a very, very bad injury, B, there's a lot of off-the-field stuff going on that we don't really know about, or C, both. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really want to be a part of any of it. Now, the Saints situation is awful right now. They are the worst cap space. They are they don't have a quarterback. Sean Payton just left. They're trying to find a new identity. And yes, I know Michael Thomas can be traded, but he is going to be a $25 million cap hit for each of the next 3 seasons. That's a lot of money for a team to take off on a guy who really hasn't played last year's. I right now have him way down in my rankings because I need to see it first. I'm out on him going into drafts this year. I won't be taking him. I'll let someone else do that. If he's great, awesome, but I am out on him for that reason. My next guy that I really had a tough time leaving off this list. I really had a tough time leaving DeAndre Hopkins outside my top 10 because I know how dominant he can be. 5 seasons in a row before this year with 160 plus targets. He was wide receiver 4 2 years in a row, top 10 wide receiver all 5 of those seasons. But this season we saw something from DeAndre Hopkins that we hadn't quite seen before. And now DeAndre Hopkins, I'm going to read this off so I don't get this right. In games that he played at least 75% of snaps, which is 9 games this season, he had 71 receptions, or it was putting him on pace for 71 receptions, 119 targets, and 15 touchdowns and 955 yards. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like the DeAndre Hopkins we know. Only 71 receptions, only 955 yards. Yes, the touchdowns kept him as a great wide receiver this year. But the touchdowns aren't necessarily a sticky stat as wide receivers come. So that really worried me. It also is worrying me just the way he's been used. Teams are just doubling him because there's really no other option in Arizona. Cliff Kingsbury has him running just an awful route tree. So it's as much other people's fault as it is his own. I shouldn't even say his own. It's just part of the situation. And so, yes, I really like DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, he's sitting right outside my top 10 right now. But just because of what we saw last year, combined with the injury and combined with age, I had to just leave him outside my top 10. The next guy I really struggled, even more than DeAndre Hopkins, to leave out, and that was Keenan Allen. The reason I struggled with this is because if you followed me at all last year, you knew that Keenan Allen was my favorite wide receiver. I was saying he could probably be a top 5 wide receiver. Obviously, it didn't happen. Mike Williams kind of broke out. But what I've kind of come to realize with Keenan Allen is he is going to be the best wide receiver 2 you could have on your team because he is so consistent. He is going to get you 16 fantasy points a game. The thing that's going to keep him outside the top 10, I think, this year, and obviously he snuck in this year, injuries helped that a lot, is touchdowns. He is a 6 touchdown a year guy. He's only had 1 year above that. He's also only had 1 year above 1,100 yards, and those were in 2 different seasons. Now, he's going to get you 100 receptions. He's going to get you 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. And he's going to do that for sure, but that's kind of where I see his cap at. I know Justin Herbert's continuing to get better, but I think that's helping Mike Williams more than anyone progress because I think Keenan Allen is just staying right where he is. So I have him and DeAndre Hopkins just on that bubble of going up to the top 10. Next one I got is Calvin Ridley, and I think he actually has the best case for being put into the top 10. Obviously, we're talking about off-field stuff with Mike Thomas. There's some stuff here. There's a reason he missed all this time. I really do think that if he goes to another team, I think it will be a contender because nobody's going to want to give up a lot for a wide receiver unless they're in a position to make the playoffs, make a deep run. Now, Calvin Ridley was wide receiver 5 in 2019. When he was playing this year, he wasn't bad. He looked good. The touchdowns weren't coming. We saw that with Kyle Pitts as well. It was just an Atlanta Falcons thing in general. I just really believe that he's going to continue progressing from what we thought he would have this year. He's going to be where we thought he would go this year. And especially on a new team, just having a fresh start, I think, will be really, really beneficial for Calvin Ridley. So I am really high on Calvin Ridley, but I need to see kind of where he goes. I need to make sure he's going to play. That's another big thing. The next one on our list that I heard a lot about was Deontay Johnson. And yes, Deontay Johnson finished as wide receiver 8 this past season. He had a pretty good season by all standards. I shouldn't say pretty good. He had a great season by all standards. 169 targets, 1,100 yards. The thing that concerns me was he was a target hog, 28% target share. However, his targets, yards per target was down at 6.9, which is good for 83rd in the NFL. I just worry that he's not going to have a quarterback that's just going to dump it off as much as Big Ben did, especially if it's Mason Rudolph. He might be dumping it off, but Mason Rudolph is a step down from Big Ben, and Big Ben was bad last year. So that does worry me a little bit, just that situation going on right now. And the last guy that I heard a lot about, I knew people saw DK and CD in a similar light. The thing with CD that I don't like as much as I liked with DK is DK really took a step forward his second year. 83 catches, 1,300 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Well, CD came back. Dak was healthy this year, and we still only saw 71 catches, 1,100 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I was really hoping for that big breakout year. That's what I wanted to see, to be all in on CD, and I just didn't see it this year. So those are kind of the guys for me that kind of fell outside my top 10. They're guys that I still really like, don't get me wrong. They're all inside my top 17 wide receivers, but I just couldn't quite fit them into the top 10 with all the talent in the wide receiver position right now. Well, thanks for listening to Cam's Corner. I hope to come out with these pretty much whenever I can. And yeah, well, thank you. Have a good one, and deuces.